Rebellions are built on hope.
And welcome to another episode of Radio Rebellion Star Wars Podcast. I'm your host, Alberto Calderon, and thank you for joining us on another Star Wars Saturday as we are in July. We finally made it to July. Happy 4th of July, long weekend to everyone out there. Hope everyone's safe. Be careful with those fireworks. Keep your dogs safe. We don't want to have them all run away. It's very important that we try to keep it safe for them. But we're here talking Star Wars, just me. As you can see, no Oti today. He's in the middle of a trip at the moment, so he couldn't join us today, but that's fine. We're going to have a fun show today. It should be fairly short, I guess, but a lot of cool stuff to talk about, or not a lot, but some cool stuff. The Mandalorian Gallery episode came out for Season 3, so we'll spend most of our time talking about that. And we'll also talk about some recent Star Wars news or comments from Kathleen Kennedy regarding the James Mangold new Star Wars movie, the Dawn of the Jedi movie, and also for the Rey New Jedi Order movie. We're gonna jump into that in a few. Dude, what? Twitter, man. You can't help Twitter. Freaking now rate limits. You don't know what's going on. You can't see tweets. You can post, but you can see the tweets, comments. It's just ridiculous out there. So hopefully everyone out there knows that we're still having a show today. And that's why it is always important that you subscribe to our show and that you're hitting that notification bell so you don't miss any of our new episodes when they drop on Saturday. And make sure to leave us a comment down below. And if it's your first time joining us, thank you very much. And of course, if you've been here before, double thank you, because we couldn't do this without you guys. So make sure, again, you subscribe, you comment later if you're watching this on the replay. If you're listening to this on the audio podcast, make sure to leave us a rating, review on Apple Podcasts. Good Pods, we're using that a lot now. Spotify, any other that you use. But thanks to everyone that's joining us today and all the other shows that we've done before. So again, it's going to be a short show today. I will see how it goes. And let's see who's out there in the chat before we start. Our friend Brennan is here. Brennan, how you doing? Thanks for joining us. Make sure to check out Brennan. You're my friend also. Check out Brennan's page, website, and his podcast, Page Turners They Were Not. He also has a lot of great stuff about Star Wars, Star Trek, all the movies out there. So make sure to give him a follow and check all his stuff out. We're gonna have you here, Brennan. I know I keep talking to Ati and stuff. We gotta figure something out to get you on the show soon. I'm gonna be taking a break mid-July. It's my birthday and then my daughter's birthday, so probably take another 2 weeks off in a couple of weeks, and then we'll come back with season 7 of Radio Rebellion podcast, most likely in August, and we'll figure something out before Ahsoka and all those shows coming. All right, if you guys are ready, I'm not ready. Let's talk Star Wars, and today we start with Star Wars news.
Star Wars news.
So before we go into those Kathleen Kennedy comments that I mentioned, this is not news, but it's fun to speculate. I think it was yesterday while promoting the new Marvel series, Secret Invasions. Qi'ra herself and Ben Mendelsohn were, again, promoting Secret Invasions, and Ben Mendelsohn asked, don't you want to revisit your Star Wars character? And Emilia Clarke kind of threw her off for a second. She didn't expect that question. She was deer in headlights, basically. And then saving it, saying, I'm in Marvel now, so I can't do it. But I don't know. Do you guys, we've talked about this week in and week out. You know how much we all love Solo on this podcast. We talk about wanting a continuation to the Solo storyline. And Qi'ra is that one character, apart from Lando, that of course had that show announced a while back, and we don't know what's going to happen. But Qi'ra is that one that, at least in the comics, has progressed a lot. That character has dealt with the Emperor, with Vader, with Jabba. She was involved with Boba Fett, trying to get a hold of Han Solo in Carbonite. So the character of Qi'ra has really stayed in the front line in Star Wars, and at least the comic books. But with this now, she could have just said, no, that's fine, or the answer that everyone gives, I would love to, but no one has reached out to me. But she was just stunned. So I'm gonna believe that something's happening with Qi'ra in the live action realm, and we'll learn about it soon enough, I hope. I hope we can get more with Qi'ra. And again, it might just be that she got caught off guard by Ben Mendelsohn's questions, but I'll love it. All right, also here, our friend Alan. Thanks for joining us. Alan, of course, our prima from out there. Mo, how you doing? Thanks for joining us. And Alan, of course, he says, yes, wink, wink. We need Qi'ra to come back. And there's so much you can do with Qi'ra. We've always talked about Qi'ra and Darth Maul, how that kind of went on. How did Maul get stuck up in Malachor, right? That's where he was. You can do Qi'ra after the events of the comic books, or kind of following the comic book line where she's dealing a lot with the underworld and Han Solo and Vader and all that stuff. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe Afra's been there also. You can bring Afra into it. Or again, you can go to the Solo kind of timeline and just do that part. I don't know. Hopefully we'll learn something soon. And one of the bad things about Twitter being Twitter today, we're waiting for either a new trailer or something with Ahsoka. Behind the scenes look, most likely the official second trailer to drop sometime this weekend. I was hoping it happened before I went live today, but of course that didn't happen. So it might be right after we finish the show. It might be going on right now, but with Twitter, then we may never know, or most likely it might happen tomorrow. So again, now we're starting to ramp up that promotional material for Ahsoka now that we're officially in July, with Ahsoka coming out in about 5 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks, not a little bit more, 6 or 7 weeks. So it's going to be good. So if we're not be able to talk about it today, basically, but next week we'll talk about that new Ahsoka promo if it drops at some point this week. All right, so the first news we're going to talk about today, and it's 3-in-1 basically, and Kathleen Kennedy was out. She was doing a recent interview with Games Radar. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy had some comments about the Daisy Ridley Rey Skywalker movie and James Mangold movie. But talking about the Rey Skywalker movie, and this is not what I wanted, so here we go. She goes on to say how it might connect with the James Mangold movie. And says, regarding the Rey movie, she goes on to say, I think what's always great about Star Wars is it's a big galaxy. And we're coming off what was a major war with the First Order, of course, with the sequel trilogy. And now Rey has made a promise to Luke, and that's really the core of where we're going and what the stories will be. And I think it offers just tremendous opportunity to introduce new characters and start with something fresh, because we culminated with what George Lucas was creating, and now we take all of that and move it to the next chapter. So we talked about this a little bit before. What do we think this Rey movie is going to be? Everyone calls it the new Jedi Order movie. So it's going to be rebuilding the Jedi Order. I kind of be up and down with that idea, just because I thought Rey was going to go in a different direction, at least in my head canon after episode 9. But it's going to be following a new Jedi Order. There's always rumblings that Finn might come back, and we really hope that John Boyega comes back to reprise his role as Finn, and then jump into that, I don't want to say promise, but what was hinted at strongly in the sequel trilogy, that Finn was force sensitive. And let's explore that a little. It's been, 10 years, I think they said, 10 to 15 years after Rise of Skywalker. So her and Finn could be getting to that Master Padawan kind of realm, so that'd be very interesting. And of course, whatever you do with Ben Solo, if he comes back as a Force Ghost, Force Memory, something with the Dyad. But again, she focused a little bit on saying new characters, and that's what I always want with Star Wars, is start giving me those new characters. We're moving away from the sequel trilogy and the original trilogy and everything that we've known and loved about Star Wars. We're jumping into this new realm, so I do want to see all those new characters. But for you guys out there, if you have any thoughts about, just hail Emilia Clarke. You're right. We just love her so much. Any thoughts about those comments from Kathleen Kennedy? Or what you guys hope that we see from the Rey Skywalker movie in terms of returning characters? If there's any that you think you really want to see, or do you want it to be more focused on some new characters? So just let me know. So then, regarding for the Dawn of the Jedi movie, this is the James Mangold movie, which is set, I think, thousands of years, like 3,000 years before anything that we know about Star Wars. She goes on to say, that comes up a lot from the moment I stepped in and George brought me into the company. There's been a lot of interest in that, she explains. So again, this constant squabble, I guess, on the internet that they don't have an idea, that they just took George Lucas' plans for the sequel trilogy and Star Wars moving forward and just throw it in the trash as soon as they signed those contracts. We know that some of the ideas in the sequel trilogy, especially the way Luke was portrayed in The Last Jedi, was something that George Lucas was thinking about. And also going back to the past and how the Jedi were created also came from one of those conversations between the two of them. So again, I know sometimes Star Wars doesn't look like they have a plan. I know understand all the criticism on that sense, but it also shows us that those conversations that Kathleen Kennedy had with George Lucas at the beginning are still there. And they're still trying to see how to bring those ideas into the forefront. And this is a great way to do it. Get some of George's thought into those. Is it going to be anything to do with the midi-chlorians? Because we know that I know people focus more when they talk about George Lucas' ideas on the sequel trilogy of something he wanted to do with Darth Maul and Darth Talon and all that stuff. And I don't care too much about that. But some of the other reports where he was trying to do something in the metaphysical level with the midi-chlorians and the symbiotes and all that. So maybe going now back 3,000 years and the Jedi or whoever finds the Force and creates the Jedi, how all that comes to be. Maybe that brings some of George Lucas' ideas from that sense. And then finishing up about bringing those two movies together, the Rey and the James Mangold movie, she says, it was something that James Mangold immediately sparked to, and I think it's really a nice compliment to what we're doing with moving into the future with Rey, and then understanding a bit more of where this all came from. She explains, because it will be at the heart of creating the new Jedi Order. So to get a real sense of what that might have begun with the Dawn of the Jedi could be pretty cool. Pretty cool, and it makes sense. We know that Star Wars is connected as much as we're moving in two opposite directions with the Rey movie going forward into, let's say, just the present, although it's going to be 10 years after we last saw Rey, to now 3,000 years in the past before we knew anything about the Jedi or whoever finds the Force. So my thinking is that the Rey Skywalker new Jedi Order movie will come first. Some things will be introduced there that then when we see the James Mangold movie, that Dawn of the Jedi, then will make sense of them. We'll understand where they came from. And of course, Rey has the sacred Jedi texts. They had to come from somewhere. So probably connect in that sense. And I'm fine with it. I don't want it to connect in the sense that there's a character that's been alive for 3,000 years. I'm going to see them now or something, but I'm sure there's going to be something from that Rey Skywalker movie that maybe doesn't make sense. So we all say, oh, we've never seen anything like this in Star Wars before, a new force power, something like that. And then when we go to the James Mangold movie, we can see how it makes sense. Most likely it's going to be tied to the Jedi text. As also Kathleen Kennedy said, this promise that Rey made to Luke Skywalker about training new Jedi. And of course, with the books, which Brennan knows, page turners they were not. She can start doing that, which most likely will then connect to the James Mangold Dawn of the Jedi movie. So all that, to me, makes sense. And I also like that they're still talking about these movies. It's not something that got mentioned in Star Wars Celebration back in April, and then they forgot about it. It still comes up. They're still talking about those ideas. James Mangold with Indiana Jones Battle of Destiny that just dropped this weekend. People are going to it. He's still in that Lucasfilm family. They're very excited for what he did there with, of course, he didn't get to do his Boba Fett movie, but now coming to do this Dawn of the Jedi. Tell us that there's a lot of confidence in what he can bring. So I'm really excited for what that might be. So let me see what you guys are saying out in the chat. And look who's here. Our friend Buck is joining on. Buck, you were banned from Twitter, Buck. Was it yesterday or the day before? Before all of us got basically kicked out because we can't see anything anymore with those term limits. Buck, thanks for joining us today. On time, early. Right, Alan is adding that Rey needs to be the Loden to Finn Bel-Serifar. As long as she doesn't die or gets turned to dust, that's fine. Also get us some Padawans written by Daniel Jose Aldeo. That'll be pretty interesting. Brennan is adding, I would like to see Rey and Finn and a bunch of new characters. I don't know how Ben would fit in, but I imagine their connection goes beyond death, and I think that's where it's gonna be. I don't see him coming back, but yeah. Right, Buck, you haven't seen Gallery Mandalorian yet, just so thanks for saying hi. Thanks for being here. And then come back in a few, after you see Mandalorian, come back and check our episode. Yeah, Alan Freebrock, hashtag Freebrock from Twitter. Even, yeah, you don't want to come back. All right. And I wonder, Brennan is finishing up saying, I wonder if the no romance rule is something the Jedi or they always had, or if it was more or less invented by the Jedi of later time. I don't, it's not really explained in the High Republic, but there's a little bit in the High Republic, especially when they're younger and they have those class like they have the different groups that the Jedi kind of growing. What the name they're called? It's like the schools or whatever you want to call them in Harry Potter. That they let them have relationships, but as they get older and they become Jedi Knights and start going into separate missions, those connections start kind of falling apart. So it's not that they're not allowed to love, especially when they're younger, they're a little bit, but as they grow, get older, and they start exploring the galaxy and become more involved in the Jedi, that kind of breaks apart. But we've seen with those three, with the main three from the High Republic, it's difficult. Clans, thank you. The clans that they have. All right. But yeah, that's something that a lot of us have talked about. If that no romance rule could have saved Anakin Skywalker, and it also us as fans, were the polar opposites. Insane if Anakin had been allowed to have that relationship with Padme, would he then not fall to the dark side and be able to just extinguish the Sith beyond that, or was he always doomed to fall? Which is where I thought he was always doomed to fall anyway. Maybe in the New Jedi Order we'll find out. That'll be interesting to at least set a precedent for that. And our friend Dale is here. Thank you, Dale, for joining us. Let us know in the comments or in the chat anything about what we're discussing today. All right, so that does it for the chat that Kathleen Kennedy had with Games Radar, which I don't really check that place out. It's more about video games. I'm surprised that they got this exclusive interview with Kathleen Kennedy, but I'm glad. And there was another report. I checked a little bit. It's about Skeleton Crew, the one of the creators, not John Watts, the other creator, and then really I just forgot his name, the main actor. They were in another podcast talking about something else, and Skeleton Crew came into the conversation. There's a little bit there, but nothing too exciting. That they might be characters from the Mandoverse that show up. We kind of know that case that when it's cool to go on adventures, but always when there's an adventure, something bad happens, or there's something happens that you need to stay away from or stay safe, and that's where these kids kind of find themselves in. So it's still very interesting. It's always been talked about in this Lucasfilm, Amblin, ET kind of sense. Also, Star Wars meets Stranger Things, not with the horror aspect, but more with kids trying to figure out what's going on. So it's going to be very entertaining. All right, so let's jump to our main topic today, and we go back to one of our segments, which we call Star Wars on TV.
Star Wars on TV.
All right, so excuse me. That's why I have my water here. Give me a second. All right, there we go. Choking on myself. Just freaking die here live online. That'll be something. We get a rating sub, but that's not what I want. All right, so for Star Wars on TV, so about The Mandalorian, we had Disney's Gallery, The Mandalorian Season 3, basically behind the scenes of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, which just ended a couple of months ago. We never get to see the one for Andor. I'm pretty certain that they don't care about it. Tony Gilroy doesn't care about behind the scenes. He's just there to shoot the show and just go. So, all right. So Brennan also hasn't seen the gallery episode. We're gonna take off. Thanks for joining us, Brennan. Let us know later. Good to see you too, Brennan. Take care. And you just had that trivia match against Alden, so go check that out if you guys haven't in a Galaxy Pod. All right, thanks for joining us, Brennan. Hopefully you'll be able to finish this episode afterwards. So Mandalorian Season 3, I enjoyed. It wasn't my favorite, but there was a lot of episodes and moments I really enjoyed. I know it was a little bit divisive, especially coming at the heels of Andor that raised the bar for what Star Wars TV could be or could look like. And of course, the writing behind it. So a lot of people were expecting the same thing for The Mandalorian, not the grittiness of it, but raising the bar on the way the show looks, how the characters express themselves, the writing, the dialogue. And when it came, a lot of people didn't appreciate that. It just felt like more Mandalorian, which to me it's fine. You can see Baby Yoda back there making sure I don't say something bad, and Darth Vader also kind of hiding. But to me, it felt like more of the same in terms of this is what the Mandalorian show is. Some episodes, especially the Coruscant episodes, steer a little bit more to the look, at least for Andor. But it didn't feel to myself as a Mandalorian episode. The other episodes did. So to me, the series still felt like the Mandalorian. I know a lot of people had issues with it, with the ending and Bo-Katan. They didn't happen. So things were rushed. Excuse me. I do understand that. But anyway, that's for a separate show. So this behind the scenes seemed to me to be more a love letter, basically, to the whole series of The Mandalorian, not just season 3. It felt almost like a recap of everything from the beginning to now where they are. Same as this season felt like it's still a season finale, it's not a series finale, but it felt like a finale to the Din Djarin story with Grogu, at least in this point being the main lead of The Mandalorian. We talked about this when we did our finale episode, and it's something that was also mentioned by Rick Famuyima, and we'll jump into it in a few minutes, talk about Bo-Katan. But this whole episode, The Gallery, was more a love letter to everything encompassing The Mandalorian, not just season 3. So I did enjoy that. And it gave it the same feeling that I had watching the show and watching the last episode. It's like, this chapter is now done. What comes next? And that's what it felt to me. It wasn't groundbreaking like the first one, that we had those 6 episodes. We got to learn about the volume, the music, the new directors, everything. This felt more like very in general. There was some behind the scenes of how some items were made, but nothing very specific. So still very cool to see how the show is made, but it was as much as in detail as some of the previous seasons of The Gallery. I love seeing the new directors and how they got to choose the genre for their episodes. I forgot, I didn't write the names of the directors, but seeing, I think it was 3, I know the one that worked on that Coruscant episode, talking about how he had seen the show and knew that Jon Favreau had seen his movie Minari, and he's like, I really want to get into that show. Is there anything for me to do there? And then Jon calls him, okay, this is your episode for what you're gonna do. Start thinking about what genre you want your episode to kind of encompass. So to me, that was very illuminating, that it doesn't come from the creators like John or Dave or the way they wrote the episodes. It's, oh, you're directing it. What genre do you want this to be? And he's really right when this is going to be a Hitchcock one, very noir detective kind of feel. So I really love that one. Then you had, when we get the pirate episode with Gordon Short, that went from a pirate swashbuckling episode at the beginning to then a Saving Private Ryan type. This is Peter Ramsey, the director of this one. Go to Saving Private Ryan when they're on the streets on Navarro trying to help Griff Karga retake the planet from my favorite, Pirate King Gordon Shard. And I love, one of my favorite things out behind the scenes is the creatures, the droids, and the environments. And I love that they touch on this. Just seeing Gordon Shard in his kelp, seaweed, Pizza the Hut, vegetarian Pizza the Hut garb, taking direction. Oh, I gotta go do this. I gotta say this. I gotta point over here. It's like, dude, you're just a seaweed character, just talking like normal to a director. So that was really funny. Also, great to see that that's a full-on costume, practical costume, with of course some CG added afterwards for the vocals and the eyes. We love seeing that. Love when they're talking about Phil Tippett, when they're gonna visit the mines of Mandalore when Din Djarin goes in that second episode when he gets trapped by the weird spider droid creature. How they created these miniature sets of the whole mines just so they have an idea what it was gonna look like. Then basically just photo scan them to then put that in the volume for the backgrounds. I love seeing that, combining all those elements of special effects. Yes, we have the volume, we can use it with all the CGI technology, but we can only get there using the miniatures, taking photo scans of it, 360 degrees, so we know how everything looks. That was great to see that. One thing that I surprised me and bummed me a little bit was that no Pedro Pascal. We got the new directors. We got Brendan Wayne. We got everyone that plays the Mandalorian. Bo-Katan, of course, we got our love with her. Everyone's there. No Pedro Pascal. I understand if he only did the voice. If you can get him on a phone call for 10, 15 minutes to just talk a little bit and then just pepper that in through the episode, that would have meant a lot to a lot of people, including myself. Even if it's just him talking about how it was different shooting this season, only being there to be able to do the voice, not being there in person, how that changes the way he approaches the character. And also the story of Din Djarin, like we just said at the beginning, this felt like the ending to his story, at least in this point. To get Pedro's opinion on how that process went, the journey of the Mandalorian, of Din Djarin, from when we first met him, walking into this cantina to get a bounty, to now just sitting like Thanos at the end of Infinity War, just sitting back in his little chateau there with Baby Yoda playing. Just hear him talk about it would have been great. It's a 50-minute conversation. So I don't know why they did it. Maybe he's busy shooting all the other stuff that he's doing, which I do understand, but give us a little bit. I'm surprised that we didn't get that. Hopefully in the end, at some point we'll get to hear it. Because we know every time Pedro Pascal's been on the red carpet and promoting all the shows, he loves talking about the Mandalorian, loves talking about the season, loves talking about working with, I can't believe I forgot her name, with Bo-Katan, and how that story has gone. So I'm surprised that they didn't get him to talk a little bit about it, but that's fine. All right, our friend Amy Guerra is here. Hey, Amy, how you doing? Hopefully you're surviving the Twitter wars of July 1st, 2023. All right, so what else? Talking real quick about the directors, because I said that Peter Ramsey was going to be one of my favorites. I love his movie, Rise of the Guardians, which I just seeing at it right now. Plus, he was one of the directors of the first Spider-Verse movie Into the Spider-Verse. Him talking about coming from the animation world, again, same as Filoni, but being able to always work with storyboards and how doing storyboards then helped him direct the episodes that he did, where he knew where every show was going to be, all the sequences. So it's great to see a director talking in that sense. Gordon Shard, I talk about him. Well, talking about miniatures, we talk a little bit about Mandalore and how the world comes up, how they come up with the world. I love the way they describe the surface of Mandalore, this green crystalline surface that comes from real life. If a place has just gone through a lot of nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs, then after a while, those sand crystals start to crystallize and become these green shards, and they just expose that to the 100% basically to make the surface of Mandalore. So I love seeing that, and again brings that even though it's Star Wars, you can still use real world elements to make it feel alien, but it's based on real life actions. Roberto, thanks for joining us. It's been a while. I know you jumped into Twitter yesterday and then said you were out. You're not missing much, guy, but thanks for being here, Roberto. Hopefully you're doing well out there. And everyone, you gotta be safe down there in Texas, all that mid-south part of the country just burning right now. Here it feels like 100. It's 95, feels like 100 down in Florida. I know Texas and all those places over there are just as bad, and then all the smoke up north. So just be careful when you're out there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Din Djarin, Bo-Katan, and their journey through this season. We've talked here before how Bo-Katan was setting herself up to be the leader of Mandalore. Some fans wanted Din Djarin to be the leader of Mandalore. We talked about he doesn't want it. He's never given that impression he wants to lead. He just wants to keep Baby Yoda safe, keep his promises, and then just leave. And people saying that's what makes him a great leader, not wanting it, Jon Snow, all that things. And then John Farrell saying like he's not Aragorn. He's not gonna be this strider loner that just comes out of nowhere to be the leader. He's never wanted it. Don't expect that he's not Aragorn, which again goes with a little bit of what we've been saying here. But on the other side, talking about Bo-Katan and Rick Famuyiwa saying that this season Bo-Katan is as much the Mandalorian as Din Djarin. And we're not breaking ground here. That's something that a lot of people have said. We've talked about it here. It didn't make sense if these 3 seasons are kind of the culminations of Din Djarin's story, at least for right now, as the central Mandalorian. Then when season 4 comes out, it's more about Bo-Katan. Now that she brought all the clans together, how can she keep them together? Can she rebuild Mandalore? Because it's a mess right now. It's still ruins. How can you rebuild from that? Excuse me. The Darksaber is gone. You can't use that anymore as a crutch first for people if you're not the ruler, if you don't have this weapon. And also people that might still believe in the ancient history saying if you don't have this weapon, you're not really our leader. How can she remedy that? Because one thing it's in the moment it might work, but then long term, how can you keep all those clans together? So it should be interesting. And hopefully something that gets explored if season 4 of The Mandalorian focuses more on Bo-Katan. We still have, of course, the Armorer. Are they going to get along? She's still the spy. We don't know who's the spy. That was so fun. Couple of weeks trying to find the spy. But it's very heavy on Bo-Katan, these gallery episodes, everything that character went through, how she went from not wanting to help Din Djarin to having to save him. Didn't notice that she rescued him from the guy that had stolen the Darksaber that she had at that point and then gave it back to him. At the same time, it's like, hey, it's not the same. To the end, saying this weapon is not needed anymore. So very cool to get more with Bo-Katan. And I think this is not the end for that character in live action. Apart, I'm not even talking about Ahsoka and the movie, the Dave Filoni movie. I think we're gonna see more, and it wouldn't surprise me when season 4, The Mandalorian, is announced. That is very heavy on Bo-Katan, and that she's the main character going forward. And I would actually enjoy that, because at this point, same as I said before season 3 started, I thought that the Din Djarin Grogu storyline had reached its end. It really has at this moment. So give me season 4, talking about some other Mandalorians, basically Bo-Katan. Giancarlo Esposito, love seeing him. I love how he talks about his character, about Moff Gideon, always wanted to improve himself. First, he wanted Baby Yoda, couldn't get him that first season. Then he always wants to be more powerful. He wanted the Darksaber, to feel more powerful. Then he had the Dark Troopers, then the Dark Trooper armor, and then that's not enough. He needs the Force. He needs those midi-chlorians for Baby Yoda from Din Grogu, I should say, to be this ultimate warrior, which is what he wants, right? He's not an actual Mandalorian, wants to be one, wants to be more powerful, Darksaber, Mandalorian armor, plus give me the Force. He couldn't reach that level, trying to up the ante with the Emperor. Love you, Giancarlo, but don't say that no one's really dead in Star Wars. He wants to come back. I hope he doesn't. I hope they leave him dead. But it's cool for an actor to always want to come back to play those characters that we love. So he basically saying, yeah, he died, but it's Star Wars, so you never know. They could bring me back. No Grimace Shake, Alan. We're not going to use the Grimace Shake to bring back Moff Gideon. Moff Gideon wanted to make Grogu to a Grimace Shake. Dude, explain to me all this Grimace Shake. I know where it is. I take my kids to McDonald's a lot. We have that Grimace Shake there. But I don't know where this just came up that everyone wants a Grimace Shake for something. It's weird purple. We don't want the Grimace make Grogu into a Grimace Shake. Who knows? Maybe we'll give him the power that he needs. And then finishing up a little bit, Jack Black and Lizzo, dude. Did anyone have more fun than Jack Black being in The Mandalorian? And the answer is no. Same with Lizzo. We know that she's a big Star Wars fan, big Grogu fan. That first day she's there with a Grogu hoodie on. Jack Black, man, I said before, I love him for that role. He plays it perfectly. Yeah, you know it's Jack Black. It doesn't matter. He even had the beard. They didn't have to put a fake beard on it. That's all him and the hair. He's there in costume talking about how Bombardier couldn't just be a documents guy. He had to be in the war. He's dancing, he's kicking, he's making this back story of he's singing. I love Jack Black. Love that we got him in The Mandalorian. Love his character. Love that episode. Actually, one of my not my favorites, but one that I understand why people might not like it. But to me, it really worked in that silliness of Star Wars, is where we're gonna end up. But myself and Oti always talk about how we love silly Star Wars. We love dumb, stupid Star Wars and stupid aliens. It's there's always been there. I think my favorite part of the whole gallery episode, which doesn't touch specifically about the Mandalorian, but Star Wars in general, came from Dave Filoni, which I've said here before is not my favorite. I don't worship at the altar of Dave Filoni. He's done some great stuff. When it comes to the history of Star Wars and how things connect, there's no one better. I'm not just a super fan of his storytelling style or the stories that he likes to tell. I prefer something else. But he hitting the head in something that I always believe. He's talking about Star Wars can be serious, but at the same time, don't forget that it's silly and it's fun. And he mentioned about Star Wars, when Darth Vader is very serious, and you gotta be serious, gonna scare you. But then you have R2D2 and C3PO kicking each other in the sense of Tatooine. C3PO kicking him, oh, you go that way, don't come crying to me when you get lost. And then, oh, he tricked me. And oh, I'm melting. And that's silly. And we all love it. And he said something about not forgetting what he loved about Star Wars when he was a kid. That has always been my point when people say, oh, we need serious Star Wars. We need Star Wars rated R. We need horror Star Wars. I understand what you're saying because we're all grown up. We're not 8 years anymore. But that's not why we fell in love with Star Wars. If you watch Star Wars from the first time, the original trilogy, like myself, and you might have been older, the younger kids now might now be older when they saw the original trilogy. Maybe they came in with the prequels. But we fell in love with Star Wars because of Luke Skywalker and the hope we saw in him, but also the droids, how silly it was, how much fun we had watching those movies. And you can just put the name Star Wars and make it an R-rated horror movie, and then it's Star Wars. There's something silly that always needs to be in there in Star Wars. And I know some people now don't like it. They compare maybe the jokes to the MCU, or oh, there's too many jokes, I didn't connect with it, just make it serious. You don't need to make everything a gag, which I get it, and there's a balance you need to play. But Star Wars has always been silly, has always been fun, and I'll give all the credit in the world to Dave Filoni for saying that no matter what he's doing in Star Wars, even if there's something very serious, it has to cut to something silly at some point, because that's Star Wars, and that's why he fell in love as a kid in Star Wars. So why are we trying to deny kids the things that made us love that, which is Star Wars at this point? They also goes for the MCU, for comic books. When people wanted already comic book movies, make Batman or Superman. Okay, we got Deadpool and Wolverine now with Logan, and James Gunn with Peacemaker on that stuff. But you don't need to make all the comic books movies and hard because now we're adults that grew up with. No, we fell in love with them because they were silly, they were fun, all that stuff. Don't take that away from the kids. So I love seeing that comment from Dave Filoni. So I love that. All right, so what for you guys out there that have watched the gallery episode, what stood out? What parts did you really enjoy? Was it listening to the new director talk about the history of Star Wars and getting to work on it, the returning directors and how they've grown through the series? Is it seeing Grogu in the little IG-11 puppet, which was great? I also love that droid bar that we get in Plaisir 15. Again, like I mentioned, I love all the creature design, all that stuff. And seeing those droids, like I said, all the droids are new or they're different. They all work. These are droids that we've seen before. And I love that also we got talking about when we're in that Plaisir section when Din Djarin and Bo-Katan are talking to the droid, and the behind the scenes where they're actually filming the scenes, the droid voice is coming out. It's not just someone speaking regular English and then it gets dubbed over. It was someone behind the scenes with a filter or something just making those droid voices. So it's very cool to keep that level for the actors. So yeah, I got nothing else. So yeah, that was the behind the scenes. Like I mentioned before, there wasn't a lot of breakthrough things that they said. Something that just blew my mind. We got a little bit more how the volume has evolved as a technology, but not too much into it. We didn't get to hear about the new composer. He didn't get to talk about he makes new themes with what uh, grandson had done. So again, it felt more like an overall history lesson or look back at the whole series of The Mandalorian, not so much focused just on season 3. So it was a little bit different to the other gallery episodes that we've seen, but still enjoyable. Always cool to get behind the scenes for a show that you like. Again, it's 1 hour, 16 minutes of behind the scenes stuff. It's something that we don't get for a lot of stuff now. So all right, so that's it for Star Wars at the moment. Like, not a lot of Star Wars news. There's nothing really going on now that we don't have any TV shows at the moment. Ahsoka is coming in a few weeks, August 23rd, I believe. You know what? It's still early. It may take 5 minutes to do a little bit of world between fandoms and talk about something else that is not Star Wars. But again, just let me know in the comments down below if you're watching this later, or still in the chat, just your general thoughts on any of the news topics we discuss or the gallery for Mandalorian season 3. But let's go to a world between fandoms. All right, I saw a comment. I'll come to it in a minute, Alan. Burry Watch. So world between fandoms, real quick. I'm gonna talk about the enemy. I've been watching Star Trek. I've been a Star Trek fan for a long time. In the dark times in the 90s, I was more a Star Trek fan than a Star Wars fan because there was nothing apart from some books and video games till the prequel came out, and actually the special editions in the late 90s, where I was really into Star Trek: The Next Generation, all that. But a couple of months ago, before season 2 of Strange New Worlds came out, they put the first season free on YouTube. So I said, let me give it a shot. It's Star Trek. I want to see Captain Pike with his big hair and all that. And I love it. I fell in love with Strange New Worlds from that first episode, and I've binged all of it. And I paid for Paramount Plus. It's all I could say. So they got me. So I've been watching season 2. I love the show. Strange New Worlds is one of my favorite new shows at the moment. It's not something that Star Wars fans hate with Star Wars show, and this is a story of the week. Week by week is a new episode, different genres. It's a thing that a lot of people, sometimes myself, complain about with The Mandalorian. Where's the story? And with The Bad Batch, I always say, why are we doing week to week? Where's the main story? All this stuff. Strange New Worlds, it's a story of the week with a big story in the background, and they jump back to the Gorn, right? The attack with the Gorn, the first contact with the Romulans, the Klingon War just happened. So there's all these things, big things happening in the background, but each episode focuses on something else, and then there's a big episode about the Gorn attack, or they gotta go to the Romulan, to the neutral zone, and all that. So it does something that we complain a lot with The Mandalorian, at least, especially with this season, that people are this not focused. This is Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Every episode is something different. The acting is great. The music is great. The special effects, the stories, the dialogue, everything. I love Strange New Worlds so much. This episode from this past week, tomorrow, and tomorrow, which they go back in time, La'an and Captain Kirk go back in time to 20th century Earth during Canada, fish out of water. Love, probably my favorite episode so far, the whole series. Also, a little bit of a nod to it's not easy to kill baby Hitler. It's not that baby Hitler is here, and I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't seen it. But when you get a chance to kill someone that you know is going to do horrible things in the future, but they're still just a kid, you can't. But the performance of Christina Chong, who plays La'an, and I forget the name of the guy that plays Captain Kirk, they just knocked it out of the park, that episode. So love Strange New Worlds, one of my favorite right now. And also started watching Star Trek Picard. Like I said, huge fan of Star Trek: The Next Generation when it came out in the 90s. So I really wanted to jump into Picard. I'm a little bit more than halfway through the first season, and this is more story-based. It's a main story that they're following. and every episode moves that story forward. So it's very different in the way that it's set up. Two Strange New Worlds. So I really enjoying this one too. I mean, you have Jean-Luc Picard there, there's Patrick Stewart. What more can you ask? And then characters from from Next Generation and some other Star Trek shows are starting to show up. So if you've been a fan from back when, you can start. You'll enjoy it a little bit more because you'll be able to connect with a few things. So again, I know it's the enemy we call, but Star Trek is very different than Star Wars. Yes, both of them are in space. They have star in their name, but the way those two franchises are set up are very different. So I never understood why people need to take sides because they're very different. Really enjoying it. Now that we don't have Star Wars shows at the moment, I really love in Star Trek, and I am on my Star Trek kick at the moment. I love everything that we're getting from it. All right, and that was my quick wall between fandom, just so we have something a little bit more to talk about today, since, like I mentioned before, it's gonna be a short show today. All right, so let me see some of your last comments. I'm gonna highlight one from, if it's working. Here we go. Now what's going on? All right, so Alan said, because Roberto asked, he's been missing a lot of Star Wars, and it feels like he's missing. And Alan said, we're in Burry Watch. You gotta be sure, you gotta be paying attention. Is it next week? I think it's next week or the following one. I guess there's gonna be a new The High Republic show, and they're gonna tell us where Burryaga is. Where's Burry? Is he alive? Is he dead? I don't think they're gonna be as, yeah, he's alive. He's not dead. He's not dead. I'm gonna just put it right there. Maybe they're gonna announce a Burryaga comic book, like a 2-issue comic book or 4 issues, talking about his escape from fighting the Rathars in Starlight Beacon, and we'll get like a 2 or 3 issue comic book. That's what I think. I don't think we'll get a whole book about it, but we're gonna get something about it. Yeah. They only sent 52 days and 14 hours. I believe this is for Ahsoka, so we're getting close. Season 2 of Strange New World is it. Alan, you're right. And guys, if you have, and I think season 2 is also on YouTube. You gotta search for it. The episodes are there, so you guys gotta check it. It's very, very, very cool, very awesome. Sorry, 52 days and 8 hours for Ahsoka. Alan, again, we're still talking about Strange New World with Alan. Excuse me, the augmented DNA episode happening during Pride was so good. And also, thanks for being here, Alan. It's some things that I don't pick up on this show, and just being able to talk to you and to other people that are the guests on the show or in the chat. Is the different levels that this show connects with different people. So yeah, that's great. And Roberto, I'm not doing an Indiana Jones review at the moment because I haven't watched it. I don't know if I'll be able to watch it. I know that Oti watched it, so when he's here next week, I'll have him do a spoiler-free review to talk a little bit about it. I don't know when I'll be able to go watch it, and I'll be honest. I walked past the movie theater this afternoon, but we were there doing something else. But I'll go watch Mission Impossible. I'll go watch Oppenheimer. I'll try to escape to watch Indiana Jones at some point soon. Really want to watch it. I enjoyed the whole series. I said a couple of weeks ago, my ranking at the moment is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is my favorite one, followed by Raiders of the Lost Ark. Crystal Skull, I put it third. Temple of Doom, when I watched it last year, I wasn't too into it. So I'm very interested to see where Indiana Jones falls. Most of the criticism that I've seen against Indiana Jones, I think it's the same criticism that we get from about Star Wars from people that grew up with it and have this, I don't know what's the word, but this vision of it being this perfect adventure. Again, because we grew up with it and we always love those things and see them differently than if we see them for the first time now. That people once have created an image of Indiana Jones that different from what the reality is. Indiana Jones is also a very silly character. And even though it's serious artifacts that he's searching and serious stories, of course, with the Nazis and all that, there's a lot of silliness into it. And I think people seeing silly stuff now, they kind of, oh, what are you doing? But that's the character. So I think that's where there's some disconnect. But when I watch it, I'll talk about it. And then Dale, sorry, said this Indiana Jones is close to the first 3 for me, which again, great, because we all love those 3 movies. And I've seen a lot of people like Temple of Doom is their favorite ones. I've seen that one also. And Crystal Skull, similar to the prequels, a lot more people are coming behind it. I liked it. It's just the swinging through the vines things kind of throws me. Just doesn't make sense, but again, it's Indiana Jones, doesn't make sense. All right, so I'm gonna leave it there. And early to then, Alan, thank you for the message. Thank you also to you. So thanks for the love bringing a queer Filipino perspective into the mix here, and we love to see it. That's one thing for us here. We want to have all those open conversations, so open and different perspective, because I could just have mine as a straight white Puerto Rican, but having different people here with different backgrounds and different ethnicities and different history, how they've just grown is very important, because that's Star Wars also, right? That's what we're talking, all these different alien cultures and strange new worlds. Like in Star Trek, I gotta go into Star Trek for this point. That's what Star Trek is, just going out there, searching out for new civilizations and new species and bringing everyone together, trying to save people. We're all in this together. We gotta move forward. And now with real world, it's been a crappy couple of days for a lot of people out there with some of the decisions from the Supreme Court. So we gotta be more in line with everyone out there, with our brothers and sisters, helping, even if it's something that I might say, it doesn't affect me directly, it does affect me. We're all in this together. So, all right, I'm gonna leave it there. Try to keep it positive on a good note. Another great Star Wars Saturday, but thanks to our friends, and I'm gonna start putting some music back here. Alan, Roberto, Dale, who else made it? Buck, Free Buck. You gotta get him back to Twitter. How do you know I'll be there? Amy, Brennan, and I don't know if I'm missing anyone, but thank you guys so much for being here today. I thought no one's gonna show up because Twitter doesn't know that I'm online, but you guys are always here. And Mo, of course, Mo was here also. All right, guys, stay safe, be safe. We'll be back next week, and also my review of Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade will be out on Wednesday, day after July 4th. So if you want, I'm gonna have my spoiler review up on the Radio Rebellion website, and then a spoiler-free review on NetGalley. So I'll tweet those out, and then I'll talk about it more during our show next week. So yeah, guys, thank you again. Happy 4th of July weekend. Stay safe, be safe, and may the Force be with you.